Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the virtual meeting of the Executive Committee for the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission. We have a quorum confirmed at 6:03 p.m. Welcome. Thanks for being here, everybody. Just a reminder, you have to stay on camera to be present effectively. So please try to keep your cameras on. Obviously, if you have to turn them off and step away, that happens. But when you're here, try to be here. We're going to start off by asking if everybody had a chance to review the meeting summary of the June 4th Executive Committee meeting, and if anybody had any comments or edits or questions about that summary. I'm seeing happy faces and shaking of heads, so I'm going to assume that the summary is accurate. We don't actually vote on that. We just move past it, and so thank you for that. I'm going to hand it over to Kate next to talk about tonight's meeting agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to confirm back with Rhonda. Did we need to do a roll call?
Oh, I'm sorry.
For president?
It would be probably a good idea, if you don't mind.
But Rhonda can go ahead and do that for us.
Thanks, Kate.
Please respond with present or here when you hear your name. Chair Bagley?
Here.
Mr. Aguirre? Mr. Alcorn?
Here.
Ms. Burns?
Here.
Ms. Coffey?
Here.
Mr. Letourneau?
Here.
Ms. Palchik's not here. Mr. Salim?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
We have quorum. Also, just for the listening public, we have the following staff participating in the meeting. Executive Director Kate Mattice, Director of Finance and Administration Scott Kalkworth, Director of Programs and Policy Ann McGrain, NVTC Legislative Liaison Amy Perrin-Seibert, Board Administrator Rhonda Gilchrist, and Web and IT Manager Melissa Walker. I'll turn it back to the chair.
All right. Thank you, Rhonda, for keeping us appropriately within the rules. So I'm going to then go back to our agenda and hand it back to Kate to go over the full commission agenda for the evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So indeed, we have rearranged the agenda for this evening. And so that's one of the things you're going to notice diving in. There are going to be a handful of action items that we're all going to pull in together. We'll do a very quick brief and then do a single roll call vote on that. Then we're going to actually have 4 different presentations. Given that this is the last commission meeting before the summer, we wanted to leave all of you with some things to be thinking about. So we're going to be doing an overview of some of the regional coordination activities that are coming as a result of the DMV Moves initiative. These are a lot of things that your localities, your local transit systems may be playing in. So we want to give you an overview of some of those things that you may see your own staff coming and speaking to you about in terms of perhaps different policies or what have you. We are going to get an update on the Envision Route 7, the bus priority activities. For those of you who were involved in the Program Advisory Committee meeting just a couple weeks ago, you got a good preview of that. We are going to have an orientation for VRE and specifically your role as commissioners as joint owners of VRE. And so we have Katie Cho from VRE providing that. And finally, just like we're going to do in a little bit from now, really kind of digest through what was in the final state budget and talk a little bit about sort of things to be thinking about as we look to what actions we may take with our legislative agenda going into the fall. So those are the 4 things. The other thing I did want to highlight, there was one public comment. It was sent out earlier today. And it was a person who's very interested in actually a lot of the things that are in that DMV Moves about regional fare policy. This is actually a letter that we received just a couple weeks ago, but we included it in our public comments. That is what I have for this evening's agenda. Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, I did just want to make sure you guys were all aware of the reorganization of the agenda. Most of our committees aren't going to report out. They're just going to be in written reports that are already submitted. And we're not going to talk through those. We're going to focus on these presentations. And the other thing I want to flag for you guys, just so we can keep things moving, is we're going to vote on a block unless there's an issue with that on the action items. And so we can certainly have discussion, but I'll ultimately call for a motion on the block if possible and move through those 3 action items quickly if we can. I'm aware that there are some things pulling at people's attention tonight, and we want to get to the presentations and then let everybody get on with their holiday weekend. Okay, so that's the agenda. Any comments or questions about the agenda, the action items, or anything that we're sort of not covering in terms of committees and other updates? Kate, it looks like.
Well, I was going to say, I really did gloss over the action items. That was
Yeah.
my apology, as I was jumping to sort of the general format. The three action items we have, one is the meeting minutes. The second is actually something I talked to this body about before, but is bringing the action to the commission so that I can issue a request for proposals to do a strategic planning effort. That is something we want to be rolling out or really scoping out, and I hope to be meeting in small groups with all of you, and likewise have you reach out to me with questions, really putting that RFP out a little bit later in the summer. So it's things that we actually would really be kicking off in late fall, early next calendar year. Just a little bit of background. The last time we did a really strategic conversation at NVTC was right after the dedicated funding for WMATA back in 2018, when we really had to rejigger how we dealt with WMATA. And so we actually only have a handful of folks. Mr. Snyder, Mr. Letourneau are probably the only ones here who were here at that time. And when it comes to really doing an examination of the type of work where we should be focusing our efforts on, it's actually been since 2014. In this effort, this is not about scrapping everything we do. And we actually have a lot of things required in code. But there's a couple things since that time in 2014. Commuter Choice Program, our toll funded program, that didn't exist in 2014. A lot of the work that we're doing actively now on behalf of the jurisdictions, a lot of this regional coordination, doing analysis on different policy areas and technologies, et cetera, those are things that have really been beefed up over the last 10 years. So the efforts for this strategic plan are to do a lot of listening center sessions and focus groups, to do an environmental scan, sort of kind of what's going on in this space that NVTC sits in, and really sort of set a direction for the next 3 to 5 years. So it's, again, not something we've really done in a while. So we want to do it in earnest. The other thing that everybody wants to know, we're actually, it's being paid for substantially by a grant from DRPT. And we'll be able to match that with existing funds. So this is not, we're not going out to be getting additional funds. This is something that we can handle within our internal budget. So the last one is, again, folks who on Program Advisory Committee, and I think we also provided some information at our last commission meeting. We've really been working through future needs on the I-66 toll programs. This is a joint effort with us and DRPT to really understand how people are now moving through the 66 corridor and what are the things that we should be looking at project-wise or policy-wise in the future of that toll revenue program. All we're asking the commission to do is accept the findings for that. We are going to be examining if there's any sort of policy changes within our commuter choice program. Those would be coming back to the commission if we wish to pursue them later this year. So this is truly just accepting the findings of that joint study we did with DRPT. So those are the three action items. Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for not mentioning them earlier.
No, that's good. I mean, I think each of us has had opportunities, hopefully, to speak with Kate about the strategic plan. We've talked about it a little bit in exec, and then I think some of you have one-on-ones with her. Any other comments here on that strategic plan RFP and what happens next with it? While we're sort of here in this space, I'm not seeing any. This isn't a very shy group, so I'm going to assume that means everybody's okay for the moment. And the same thing on the I-66. I mean, I think the takeaway a little bit is that this is the assessment, and then we'll actually act on it in the fall, and with the conclusion. So Kate will give a similar breakdown of that during the full body meeting, and then I'll just call for a vote on the block of all three. So if, Matt, if I see your hand is up.
Yeah, just on I-66, Kate, it's slightly beside the point for what this work is, but, and you and I have talked about this a little bit in passing. Clearly, the operator has adjusted the algorithm to some extent, and the toll rates now are much less commensurate with traffic than they used to be, to the point where
you're talking about the outside the Beltway?
Inside the Beltway.
Oh, inside the Beltway. So VDOT. Okay.
VDOT.
Yeah.
They're clearly like 2022, even when it's a completely clear 65-mile-an-hour ride all the way into the bridge. Don't ask me how I know. something's happening there. I know I mean, we get the money, so we're not necessarily good for us, probably ultimately, but it feels gougy.
Mhm.
So, what's the right venue to discuss
Well,
that?
so I do have some time with VDOT leadership in Northern Virginia. So let me start with that.
Yeah,
Some of
I
those
mean, I
things are
could go to
also
them
done in the
too, but I
central
feel like this
office,
is
but I think,
bigger.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think just sort of understanding, we can get a little bit of background and then obviously we can go and discuss. So Inside the Beltway is a VDOT managed
yeah,
project. So they are the ones that are engaged versus Outside the Beltway, which is the private
the
concessionaire.
private
So that's
contract.
a little bit
Yeah,
different.
yeah,
But let me find the best way to discuss that. We mean more on the operational side of things versus the policy side of things. Obviously,
yeah.
um, we need to learn a little bit more.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt. Any other comments or questions on these action items? Okay, so I think what we'll do is move on then to a legislative report on the biennial state budget. I know Amy Perrin-Seibert is here. Kate obviously is working on that and has sent around some summaries and some insights for us all. But I'm going to hand it over to Amy now to give us an update. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do so. I think obviously I finally have good news that we passed the budget. Yay. It got completed. Just obviously down to the exact wire on the 30th, it was signed. So, we're done with that. And now we can start thinking about the next one already. So there is no rest, I think, for that. But I think one of the things that, Kate and I have been talking about is sort of kind of starting to think about probably giving everybody a little time, I would say July, to perhaps take a breath, particularly the localities, based on what has been passed as our sort of first step on a capital piece, but kind of trying to think about looking at that as a first step, kind of looking to see how all the localities feel about the idea of this referendum, the 1%, and really looking, kind of matching that up with the needs both of WMATA, but also with local transit and with VRE as we move forward, and then the operating piece still, right? So we've still got a lot to do. And so I think we just need to kind of figure out how to piece all those puzzle pieces together. So would certainly appreciate you all thinking about that and taking some time to kind of consider what that's going to look like for your localities. Like, if you end up doing a referendum, what's your timing on that? What do you think you could raise from that? How much money can go, to schools and to public transportation, and kind of just help us get a sense, I think, probably by the end of the summer, like maybe where everybody is on it, so we can start thinking about like what our plan is going to be to kind of fill the rest of the gaps that we know still exist. So I think that's probably the sort of most important piece for us moving forward. Just want to know that everyone, just to recognize that NBTC certainly recognizes that there are still lots of gaps, particularly for VRE, particularly for local transit, and obviously the big operating piece. We're good for 2 years, but we certainly need to have a plan for after that. So that's kind of my report. I know you have a lot on the agenda. Happy to answer any questions, or if you guys have any thoughts, happy to handle this too.
Yeah, Walter, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So, yeah, I mean, I would be curious. I've not yet talked to anybody on the commission that is seriously thinking about moving forward with the referendum in their jurisdiction. So I would just ask if anybody is actually seriously considering that to let me know, because it could change. I think as a region, we should be looking at this, but this is definitely something we need to, I think, talk a lot more about at the commission. So thanks, Sarah.
No, I agree. I think Maureen, if you want to chime in next, and then I see Canex's hand up as well.
Yeah, I'll just say I do think Arlington is very seriously considering it. Certainly not for the November 2026 ballot. There is absolutely no chance of that happening. So I I know that there was like some conversation of like, oh well, you can do it for this year. Like there there are so many conversations that have to occur both internally and politically for that to even we're in no way, shape, or form prepared to move that quickly. But I will say from our perspective, I don't know that we unless other things change, unless we have another different strategy as far as WMATA funding goes, at least for Arlington, I'm not sure I see an alternative to hopefully passing a referendum. And obviously, that is not a given. Even in Arlington, like, I mean, I think that we have more than a 50-50 shot of being successful in Arlington, but it's a massive investment of everyone's time and energy and political capital and funding and really having to build a movement to do it. And so we're not taking the decision lightly, but I don't know that we see another way to meet our metro obligations if we didn't go forward with the referendum. So that's kind of where we're at the moment, with the understanding that, like, it's all subject to change, right? And we'll see, we'll see what else develops between now and then. But I think for us to even have a chance to put it on the 2027 ballot, we do kind of need to start having that conversation with our public now, so that it can be socialized. And I think that's one of the challenging parts, is not knowing where others in the region are, because I do think, and Sarah and I had a little bit of this conversation, staying really aligned together if multiple jurisdictions are moving forward, really being in lockstep, really being organized and intentional and strategic, is going to be so critical. And so I worry about having enough time to do it right, but I also worry about getting to fiscal 29 and not having the money we need to pay our bills. So we're trying to make the best of the situation. And that's our thinking as of, July 2nd in Arlington.
Yeah, I'll hand it over to Kenneth, but I think to that point about regional, even if a contributing jurisdiction isn't having the referendum, I think the messaging, collaborative messaging will be important, depending on, who does it and when. Everybody, ideally should be talking to each other. Kenneth.
No, yeah, I was going to reiterate. I mean, we need to send a unified message to Richmond. It can't just be one of us doing a one-off. Like, it's too critical. And I'll just be frank. I was expecting more from the state. I'm giving them a pass and saying, hey, they only had a couple months. This next session, this is where they're really going to try and take off and do something really serious with transportation. Because, I mean, frankly, this isn't it. And so, yeah, we're going to have a lot of frank conversations with each other as jurisdictions to make sure we're all on the same page. And again, send a unified message down to Richmond.
Sarah, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Walter, please.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, well, Maureen and Kenneth, I didn't expect to have this conversation tonight, but that's a good start, because we definitely need to talk about this and figure this out. And one of the things that's in the back of my mind is I am from a jurisdiction that over the past 3 decades has had 3 different referenda, 2 of them on school funding, relating to meals tax, and then one was transportation funding, 0.5% sales tax. All 3 failed. And this was actually the beginning of NVTA, was that transportation referendum. So, and Dave, I know you know this. So I think we need, as a region, to have more of the conversations, and frankly, also with our delegation, and figure this out. So thank you.
That's a valuable context and history, I think, as well, Walter. Thank you. Dave, please.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on the conversation so far, especially Kenneth's comments. I need to know more about the dynamics in Richmond. The outcome, to say the least, was unexpected. And if the issue is going to be solved in Richmond, as a lot of it should be, then that dictates one thing. If it will never, ever be solved in Richmond, that dictates another action. But to get there, we need a whole lot more information. And does this now open up all the transportation funding, or do we just stick to the formulas that are involved in transit? So I have a lot of questions about about what happened and why, and what's the best thought about where we're going to be 2 years from now, because that'll make a huge difference. And I frankly am not clear I understand what the dynamics were in Richmond that led to what happened. And so I invite, and we will need the active engagement of our delegation to understand that better. But I do think we ought to spend the summer thinking about contingency plans. If this, then this, if this, then this. We've already talked a little bit about the importance of regional cohesion, and I couldn't agree more on that. So that's one factor, but one among many. So that's just my initial reaction to it.
No, I appreciate that, David. I like the framing. I think, for Kate and her staff and for Amy, that could be a useful sort of construct as we move forward. Sort of what are the things we could lobby for in the General Assembly still, in a next session? If, what are the things locally, regionally, and, if this happens at, General Assembly, what does that mean for locally? If this doesn't happen, what does that mean? I don't know if it should go left to right or top to bottom, visually, but I think that sort of decision tree would be helpful to a lot of us as we understand the dynamics and to Kennick's point and what could still be possible, in the next session, and absent that, what does that mean for us? And rather than have us start scratch, at that moment, we already have our, okay, if A and B doesn't happen, this is what we're going to do as C and D as local jurisdictions in 2027. Amy, I don't know if you want to comment at all on sort of Dave's questions, or if that's more just a, revisit in the fall sort of dialogue.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I think there's still some unpacking that needs to happen. I think about sort of how we got where we got to. And I don't have a good answer at the moment for that, truthfully, about sort of like the behind the scenes dynamics of where that plan came from, and sort of who liked it, who didn't. I don't have those details yet. No one is really interested in talking to anybody right now, as you can imagine. I'm sure the senator would agree with that. Yeah. No one's taking any meetings in July. So anyway, we'll have some time to kind of unpack that and think about kind of what happened. And and I think the biggest question, obviously, that we keep, and I think this is sort of what Dave was sort of implying, is like, it's like, do they think they're done? Like, do we think that this is all they're doing? Right. I think that's probably part of the question that you're thinking about. Certainly a question that we have as well. I don't think that's the case, but I hope I'm right about that, but I don't know that to be true. I mean, I do think that people need to realize that there's a lot more problems to be solved, right? I mean, we only solved for a portion of what we did. I do think most people think it's a first step. I know that Delegate Krizik would have said that to me when we were talking after it came out. He was like, "This is the first step, Amy." Like, so I think that I'm hoping that's the case. But I will try to get more of an unpacking of that as we move forward. So, but I don't have an answer for that at the moment.
No, I appreciate that, and I'm not going to put the senator on the spot after they just sort of wrap this up. But I think it's good that we're asking these questions. I see Maureen has a hand, and then Walter, and then I am being mindful, y'all, that I want to give everybody just a touch of downtime to eat something or regroup themselves before we log back on at 7. So Maureen, I'll come to you, and then Walter next.
Yeah, and I think what Kennick said about us all having cohesive messaging to Richmond really reminded me that, like, I also think it's really important that everyone keeps the messaging, like, this cannot be put out as like a win for funding transit. Like it is, we are okay for this year, this fiscal year. We are not in a catastrophic position, but I just worry about people taking this as like, well, we gave the local governments a solution, so like they should take it. And I just really worry about, especially from a political incentives perspective, right? Like having any message out there that like we funded WMATA, like we funded transit and we're good. And so like I think staying really aligned as local governments that like this is not the solution. This is not the end of the conversation. And Amy, I really appreciate that you said that people see this as a first step, because that's been one of my anxieties since the conference report came out, is like, are people thinking that this is, you know, they did it and we're all good? Because that's really, I mean, that's really scary to me when I think about, just for Arlington County, the fiscal 29 bill of, you know, $50 million in an additional $50 million in operating, plus an additional $35 million or more in capital, having us get, you know, nearly 80 or $100 million bill in one fiscal year with potentially no new funding source to meet that with. Like, that is not a win, not for us. And it is causing, I think we just have a great deal of anxiety. And so to Kanik's point about staying aligned on messaging, I really think we need to make clear to folks in Richmond that like we cannot campaign on this as a win. This is we've stopped the bleed, like we've prevented catastrophe this year, and that's a really important and good thing. But this can't be it. It just can't be.
Walter?
Yeah, thank you. And just to build a little bit on what Maureen was saying, thank you for saying that. I mean, the reality is in Fairfax County, this is 2 cents on the tax rate, on the real estate tax rate we would have to raise. So, you know, let's not fudge it. I mean, it's not the answer. And so it's a good step. It's a placeholder, I consider it. But you know, let's also remember, and Amy mentioned this, the state has more work to do for their share. So we're still in a situation where the state is putting general fund monies into their portion of support for operating funding, and that's not sustainable. So this is going to have to get back in the General Assembly in one way or another. And I would encourage us all to be thinking about, and again, talking with our delegation members about how we might be able to get something that, you know, is a little bit more workable. And so anyway, just my 2 cents, but thanks everybody for the conversation. And you're right, Sarah, it is, some people are going to need to eat before
Yeah.
7.
No, I'm mindful of that. Okay, well, so I think this was, I think, a productive, actually, like first feel out just to get a sense where people are at, and for Amy to sort of hear the questions that we have, and Kate to hear, and the senator to hear, sort of what we're all thinking about. So I appreciate everybody's candor and participation. The last thing on our exec agenda is some administrative items. Kate, can you touch on those?
Super quick. This is really a reminder. There's no August meeting. We will see you again in the beginning of September. This fall, we've got a couple of things that are coming up that I thought you might be interested in. We will be celebrating the 10th anniversary of commuter choice. We're working on what that looks like, perhaps an event or something like that. You guys are going to get a preview, obviously, of where we are with Envision Route 7. My anticipation is going to be a good conversation in this commission and each of the jurisdictions involved with Route 7 as to what are the key things we can do to keep that moving forward. We obviously always work on our annual report on WMATA and the legislative agenda as well. The other thing I want to put in there is we are planning a Route 7 bus tour. So we'll keep everybody apprised of that. The idea is really sort of seeing what's going on in that corridor and having a great tour doing that. And finally, to put on your calendars, because it's already booked, Monday, December 14th, at the same location we've had at George Mason Shar in Arlington, is our legislative forum. So that's usually a morning affair, very well attended. And so obviously we have not baked what the agenda is. However, I know many of you are familiar with that event. And so I just want to make sure you have it in your calendar now, because it's on that Monday, the 14th of December, again, in the morning, at the Shar School in Arlington. And so that's what I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Kate, for the overview. And yeah, I'm excited about the Route 7 bus tour. I think you guys are looking in October.
We are.
Yeah. So everybody, you know, if you have feedback on that when you're asked, try to get it back to them so they can start planning. Anybody have any other questions about this evening's meeting or on the exec agenda? If not, and seeing none, and unless Rhonda tells me I've missed something, I think what we'll do is we will adjourn now from exec. There is a separate Zoom link. Just be mindful of that. Rhonda sent it out, I think, as a refresher with the meeting material, so it should be pretty high up in your inbox. So we'll regroup at 7 o'clock. Same rules about camera being on, definitely during the vote and ideally during the presentations. I'll make a little shout out. Katie Cho is going to be there to give a VRE presentation. VRE had a retreat 2 weeks ago where we spent 3.5, 4 hours. And the meatiest part of the conversation was sort of marketing. How do we get people to ride in the next 4 years? And how do we get people to ride after, you know, the Long Bridge opens? And so to the extent y'all can, you know, provide some feedback and you know, just some enthusiasm, I think, there, because they're really in the thick of it. They've got a lot of going on at VRE right now. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and focus tonight. And I will see you all again in about 26 minutes.